What is going on, guys? Noah Brewer here, back again with another video, and this is going to be part 2 of my taking a store from 0 to 6 figures in 1 year. And in this video, we're going to be going over scaling, and I'm basically going to share with you all the lessons and things that I've learned, transitioning from the testing phase, finding proof of concept, and then actually moving into the scaling phase, and a lot of the issues that you're going to come around, and a lot of the issues that we came around when we scaled this store, pretty much from zero, like we were doing like 50 to 100 bucks a day, all the way up to $18,000 per day. And we also had TikTok shop doing about 5K a day at this time, so over $20,000 per day. And we had our very fair share of issues here. It was not smooth sailing. So in this video, I'm just gonna be covering pretty much everything that I know and I recommend, pretty much from the scale of like $1 to $5 million, all the potential issues that you might come across. If you haven't seen part 1, I highly recommend checking that out. I basically covered all of the things that go before this. So finding proof of concept and verifying proof of concept, whole lot of content in that last video, so definitely go check it out. But now we're gonna move into the actual scaling phase, which if you simplify that and make it very easy to understand, all you're doing is you're basically pushing whatever you're doing to its boundary and then finding what is causing the boundary, which I like to refer to them as bottlenecks, and then you're solving them. And that's literally all you're doing over and over and over again. And very rarely from the time you have initial proof of concept are you actually gonna have to move back into the proof of concept stage where you're like testing and trying to find like a new winning product or new systems that work or whatever. So yeah, once you're here, it's pretty much just this over and over again. You're just scaling, solving problems, scaling, solving problems over and over and over again. So I'm gonna go through some of the things that, or some of the problems that you may encounter when you're trying to scale your e-commerce brand to, multi 6 figures or even 7 figures. And one thing that's important to note is a lot of people really like to structure their business up front, and they do a ton of work trying to basically structure their business to do like $100 million a year. This is not what I do, and I basically solve the problems that are directly in front of me. So in my opinion, this is the best way to scale a business and actually solve problems in that business, because if it basically keeps you focused on what really matters. So this is why I say push until boundary is step number 1, and then you solve the boundary or you solve the bottleneck as step number 2, because a lot of people try to do this backwards, where they try to prepare for 100K a day when they haven't even gotten there yet. And I would say that this is probably one of the first mistakes that you could make, whether it's buying too much inventory or over hiring or like overbuilding your systems. Like you can waste a lot of time and money and other people's time and stuff if you try to over prepare. So push until boundary step 1, solve boundary step 2. Very important that it is done in this order. Another thing is like obviously different goals and different businesses call for different solutions. So this is like, I'm just gonna give you like some of the common problems, but obviously there's a lot more problems that can come up. And basically whenever I do catch myself solving problems that I don't have yet, or maybe I'm creating problems, even worse, which I mean, we've all done it. The first thing I try to do is kind of course correct, figure out what the actual bottleneck is, and then solve the actual bottleneck. So I'm constantly fine tuning this process where it's like, I'm pushing until the boundary, and then I'm constantly asking myself, what is the boundary? What is the boundary? Do I need to spend more on ads? Do I need to, increase my LTV? Do I need a different sales channel? Like I'm just constantly testing, like, okay, what do I need to do? And I make sure that I'm on the right path, and I'm not like just trying to stay busy solving problems that I don't have. So very important. So here's some of the issues that I have, and I'll kind of brush the surface of a lot of them. And if you want me to go more in depth on each of them, then please let me know in the comments, and I'm happy to make, a video on each specific subject that goes way more in depth. But for this video, I just kind of want to give you an overview just so that you know what to expect when you're actually going to scale your business. I did want to add in DMCA here. This is probably one of the most common issues that people come to me with, which is like they find a winning product, they find their proof of concept, they verify the proof of concept, and then they try to go and scale. And a lot the issues that they run into is either their ad creative is stolen, their images are stolen on their website, like their product is like private labeled and it's somebody else's logo. So the first thing that I would say is like, if you're running into these issues, because a lot of people do skip the verified proof of concept stage that we talked about in the last video, and they go straight to the scaling phase, and they start scaling their ads and spending more and stuff like that. And then they run into DMCA issues which, yes, this is an issue that comes up in scaling if you are using repurposed content and stuff like that. But this is like, you need to take a step back into the verifying proof of concept stage, because if you watch my last video, a big part of verified proof of concept is becoming completely independent of all of your content and product, and that includes ads, images, everything. So this is kind of a step 2 in my opinion, and while you can scale before this, and honestly you probably should if you can, this is like, you're kind of taking a step back into the verification of the proof of concept. So I just wanted to say that. Because it is one of the more common things that I run across, but again, this is like less of a scaling issue and more of a proof of concept issue, because again, if you had your own ads, your own images, your own product label, all of that was all good, then you wouldn't be running into these issues at all. So you got to solve that first. Now, probably the biggest issue, and the one that, you know, I work on every single day for the most part, is loss of profitability. You know, pretty self-explanatory. Like, you're spending more money, getting more customers, you know, whatever it is you're doing, whether it's ads or influencers, you're just not making enough money to be able to spend more and, you know, put gas on the fire. One of the first solutions I would say to this is like, make sure that you're giving it enough time. Because I have a lot of people that come to me like, I've increased my ad spend and it's performing like shit, and then it's only been like 1 day or it's been 2 days. It really hasn't been enough time. So what I would say is like, if you're pushing the boundary, you should really give it like 3 days minimum to decide if it's worth holding until 7 days, because you're not truly going to have any real data until you give it at least a full week, and ideally at least a full month at the new scale, like whatever you're pushing boundaries on, whether it's like a new ad spend or whatever like that. So, but you have to give it a little bit of time. You can't like push the boundary and be like, oh, my bottleneck is I'm not making enough money, when it's only been 1 day. You have to give it time. Another thing I like to say is losing profitability while scaling is like very normal, but you should be able to maintain 15% plus profits at scale, and even when you're increasing your spend. So for the most part, when you're at low spend, you're more than likely, if you're doing paid ads, more than likely going to be at like a 30 to 40% margin. You should be able to push that up to where you're hitting 15%. So if you push to a point where you're at a 15% margin and you continue pushing past that point, and let's say over the last 7 days it dips down to a 10%, then you would fall into the category of loss of profitability. So what I would say is like, if you're scaling, you probably shouldn't expect like 40% margins, but 15% is good. So if you're dipping down to like 5-10%, you might want to pay attention for the next like 5 minutes or so of this video, and possibly request some more content on these videos, because I've been very, very good in my businesses at, you know, overall profit optimization and just being able to make more money off of a certain amount of customers or traffic or whatever it is. So I'll kind of brush the surface and give you some ideas on, you know, maybe some things that you can try in your business. Maybe you could take some notes or, you know, screenshot it or whatever you need to do. But the first thing that you should do is, you know, just think about overall profit optimization, because pretty much everything on here falls under profit optimization. So it's kind of a broad thing, but we'll get into the more specific. But it's basically making micro adjustments to your business that increase overall profitability. This can be, you know, through basically making more money per customer, increasing your conversion rate, AOV, lifetime value, doing like a lot of back-end marketing, like affiliate marketing, email marketing, offer testing, testing different landing pages, like doing creative testing. Like, these are more, you know, creative fatigue is, you know, something that you might come across where just like a creative just dies out for like no apparent reason. These types of things happen. And this is where you kind of need to move into the mode of like, you're constantly trying to push ad spend, but you're also trying to make the business better, and you're trying to make more money off of your customers so that you can keep pushing ad spend and get to higher and higher levels. So, you know, conversion rate optimization, this is basically, you know, trying to just increase your conversion rate. Like, how can you make the buying process easier? How can you make the sales process easier or more enticing? And again, this falls under, you know, offer testing. It could fall under landing page testing, like doing different landing pages, or even making micro adjustments on your existing landing page. It could be something to do with your cart drawer. Like, there's so much that you could do for actual conversion rate and improving it. Just make sure that you're looking at all metrics whenever you're testing conversion rate, because a lot of times the things that you do to increase your conversion rate might actually lower your AOV, and same thing vice versa. You know, some of the things you do to increase your AOV might increase your conversion rate. So for example, you might increase your pricing, but it doesn't really matter if it just balances out in the conversion rate. Like you get X amount of visitors and you make X amount of dollars. So you have to, pay attention to every single metric when you're doing this. It's extremely important. Average order value, so increasing the amount of money people spend on each actual transaction. You could do this with, upsells, cross sells, different offers, different sales process structures. Obviously, every business is different, and every business has its own finesse to try to get people to spend more money. These are all just things that you can do there. Increasing the lifetime value. So this is not the AOV. A lot of people get these twisted up. But most businesses are AOV based businesses where you kind of have people come in and just place an order and you might not ever hear from them again, or they'll come back, a year or more later, which is fine. But it's very, very hard to measure that. So most businesses, prioritize average order value over LTV. But LTV is also extremely important because this is just how much money are people spending with you over time. If every single customer is willing to pay you every single year for the rest of your life, how much would you be willing to pay for that customer? Well, the answer is a lot. And what would your ROAS be if that was the case? Huge, right? So that means that you could scale higher and higher and higher. Back to LTV is if you're doing LTV optimization, another thing that's extremely important is how fast are you collecting the cash? Because like I said, if every single one of your customers comes back and buys from you a year from now, then that means, your ads are going to be extremely profitable, but then you have to float, any losses, or if you're just breaking even, you have to break even for an entire year until you can start compounding your results. So a lot of people, do monthly subscriptions. You can add in complimentary products. You can add consumable products that go along with your main product, like things that, maybe it wears down faster, or maybe it's like a refillable. So increasing the actual LTV dollar amount, but also decreasing the amount of time it takes to collect the lifetime value for that customer is very, very important. Email marketing, affiliate commissions, pretty self-explanatory. I think people would be surprised how much you can actually make on affiliates on the back end. If you have a ton of traffic. Obviously this depends on your niche heavily, but just something to think about, and maybe you could do it, maybe you can't. Offer testing. This is really, really good for profit optimization, conversion rate, AOV, because you can create offers that entice people to spend more money. And that's pretty much the goal with offer testing, is you're trying to get people to spend the most amount of money as possible and have the highest conversion rate as possible. And there's a balance there. If you have $100 average order value on your offer, but your conversion rate is terrible, it might perform worse than something with an AOV of $50 that has a much higher conversion rate. So you have to pay attention to all metrics when you're doing these things. But you could try, bundles. You could do buy one get one or buy two get one. You could give bonuses and test different gifts, like basically add-ons if they just buy from you. I think shipping offers goes in here as well. Like for one of my brands, if you buy 2 items, you get free shipping, for example, and we have a high percentage of people that do that. The next thing is landing page testing. Basically testing all different landing pages, very, very similar to offer testing, except you're not really changing the actual offer, whereas offer testing, you could do it on the same landing page. This is gonna be a completely new landing page. So you could do a listicle, which is like, top 5, whatever. You could do advertorials, which is more tutorial based, like how to, or how this person did, or, case studies, kind of stuff like that. You could send traffic to different pages on your site. Most businesses have home pages, collections, product pages. You could try those 3. One of the stores I'm working on right now, the homepage actually converts very, very well. So we tested it in a campaign. It's just something that is worth testing, so we did it. You also have messaging and copywriting, and obviously images and all the visuals on your actual website that can be tested as well. Loss of profitability. If you're doing everything else, and your creatives seem to be dying out, like your creative that was performing great last month is just performing like shit this month, then obviously you can do creative testing. And this could absolutely help. Having multiple winning creatives can definitely allow Facebook to spend more money at a higher profitability, just because, different ads yield different results. And one thing that I would say is if you have one main winning creative and you're struggling to scale it, I would say that you should probably just try every single different variation of that one winning creative before you stretch out and start testing completely different creatives. And there's so many different variations. You could do different hook text, hook clips, voiceovers, text, call to actions. You could try like the same concept in image form. You try different aspect ratios. And then once you go through all of those and you test like 50 to 100 different variations of your main winner, it should kind of pinpoint what makes your main winning ad the actual winner. Is it the clips? Is it the text? Maybe it's the audio, maybe it's the concept or the angle of the ad as a whole. And then once you know that, it'll be very, very easy to start testing new stuff and like mix in all the things that you learned from your main winning ad into all the new ads that you're testing. But obviously test the variations of your main ad first, because that's probably what is going to have the most chance of working. So that was kind of a lot of information, but that kind of covers loss of profitability and some different things that you can do when you're scaling your brand. If you're seeing, 10% margins, 5% margins as you're scaling, very, very important that you're in tune with all of this. I can't tell you the amount of people in e-commerce that, I've went to that literally just like launch a product, launch an ad, and never and it works and they scale and do millions of dollars, and they never touch the website. They never test new creatives. They never test new offers. Like, it's literally insane to me that, they get away with this. But the reality is you are not going to get away with it for very long. And before you write off the entire business and just shut it down or whatever, you need to have your eyes on this, because, most people will just push until a boundary and they'll just stop. They don't even bother solving the boundary. And that's my point in making this video, is you really have to have this feedback loop of pushing, solving, and constantly questioning, what do I need to push? And then what do I need to solve? And just constantly being in tune with those things. Another big issue that you might have here is distribution limitations. So this is basically you can't scale any further because you don't have the right manufacturing or the fulfillment, or maybe you do have the right one, but they just don't have enough time to set up the systems. They can't operate at the scale that you need them to. This is the issue that we saw with this business. And as you can see, we were able to scale to 15K a day, but we could not scale higher than this. This is not because of our ad spend and profitability issues. It's because of distribution issues. So for this business, we did not have loss of profitability at all. When we were doing, $18,000 here, this is not even Black Friday. This was a week before Black Friday. We were spending $3 to $4 grand on ads. So our profits were astronomical. And this was our bottleneck. So I have a little bit of, frontline experience with this issue. And it's the worst issue to deal with in business, because I would much rather deal with loss of profitability issues, because then at least I know I'm maximizing what I have, whereas distribution limitations are basically you can make a lot more money, you just don't have the ability to fulfill on it. So there's a couple things that you can do. You can either continue selling and scaling and apologize later and solve the problems, or take the time to figure it out and just slow down and just be okay with having a longer growth curve. I think doing a mixture of both of these is fine. Maybe you can switch to a pre-sale model, but if you have extremely good customer support and you're lenient with refunds, and most customers aren't going to be delayed more than a month, it should be fine to just continue selling and scaling, and just on the back end try to figure out how to get as big as possible without completely screwing people over. But obviously, either way, I think it doesn't matter. If you're trying to build, a 5 to 10 year brand, it's probably best to just take the time and just accept a longer growth curve than to do this, because this can, ruin your reputation a little bit, especially if you're, on Amazon or other platforms that are very feedback heavy. But again, if you have great customer support and stuff, you can get away with it. Like I said, find your balance on both of these, but this is 100% one of the most annoying problems that you can encounter with scaling. The last thing that I would say is this is kind of something that I don't like entertaining, doing these kind of things. These are kind of my last resorts in a business, because I always believe that you can always go bigger. But let's say that you just you feel like you've exhausted, and you've actually exhausted all of your options in a particular business. And you're just I can't scale this thing for the life of me. I can't increase AOV. I can't increase conversion rate. Every time I increase spend, or the product just doesn't sell anymore. I've tested, 300 creatives. I've done all these things. You may be seeing structural limitations. I would say in the $1 to $5 million price range, there's probably a 1% chance that you actually have structural limitations. But it is something that happens, and I think, you know, entertaining this level of thought can open up new opportunities for you. So what do you do if you think that you have, you know, structural limitations, which is basically like limitations that are outside of your control in some way? Like, for example, the brand I was just showing you is having a really hard time these last few months because 95% of our customers are buying them as gifts. So it's a total Q4 product, right? So we have a little bit of a structural limitation because 95% of our customers are buying them as gifts. But that doesn't mean that I can't test offers like a Mother's Day bundle. You know, Mother's Day is coming up. Valentine's Day bundle. Like, we have holidays, we have anniversaries, birthdays that happen year round. So it is a structural limitation, but there's still solutions within, you know, the normal optimization of a business to solve these problems rather than just trying to find a new business. You know, these are some of the things that you can do. New front end products, right? Great to do if you're trying to expand your business, but obviously it's not a solution. You're mostly gonna cause more problems by doing all of these things. But like I said, it could create more opportunity. So new front end products, you know, if you're selling one product, maybe you could try testing similar products on the front end, try to find another, you know, source of customers. New business model / pricing model. This kind of goes back to like offer testing, which is basically, you know, maybe you can introduce subscriptions, or you can, you know, just completely change the pricing model of the business. If you think it's dead, there might be a pricing model that works better. New sales channels. You know, one of the things that we've been doing in the downtime, like while it's not Q4 and we're not scaling super aggressively, is getting on Amazon. This is something that, you know, last year we were like, wow, if we were on Amazon, we probably would have made, you know, 20-30% more just from the spillover traffic. So that's what we're doing this year. We're like, okay, so we had a structural limitation because we were not on Amazon, so now we're getting on Amazon. And that's just something that I think is worth focusing on. I know a lot of people don't like to diversify their focus, and I think that's perfectly fine. If you just want to focus on, you know, Meta and Shopify, fine. But I do think that if you can like hop on Amazon and just make an easy, you know, extra 20-30% of revenue just from the spillover, I think it's worth it. And Amazon has so many benefits as an independent as well. And the last thing, you know, new marketing platforms or channels. You know, if you're doing influencers and influencers are slowing down, you might start like experimenting with paid ads. Same thing vice versa. Like if your paid ads are dying, you might want to start experiencing with influencers. But like I said, pretty much all of these things are going to cause more problems. It's not really about solving the problems that you actually already have, but doing these things can open up new opportunities. So I still highly recommend, you know, entertaining it and just keeping them in mind as you're building your business. Remember, it all sounds super complex, but it all comes down to this. You're just pushing until a boundary, whatever that means. If you're doing influencers, you're gonna keep on hiring influencers until you can't anymore, until you see diminishing returns. And then when you can't hire them anymore and you're seeing diminishing returns, that's gonna basically expose the problems that you then need to solve. And same thing with paid ads. If you're doing paid ads and you start scaling and your margins go from like 40%, 30%, 20, 15, 10, you know, pretty much you should be doing the profit optimization and trying to figure out how to make more money off your people, or finding a creative that converts better, or a page that converts better, and which basically is profit optimization. If it's a little bit further down the funnel though, you know, you should be focused on doing these things so that you can continue scaling and pushing the business. And I just don't want you stopping at, you know, pushing at boundary, because a lot of people just push until boundary, and you can get very, very far. Like you can still get to fucking, you know, 50K a day just doing this without needing to like solve any real business issues. But doesn't mean that you should. And once you do, like if it is a business where you could hit 50K a day without solving many boundaries and improving the business, then imagine how big you could go if you did actually solve problems and improve the business. So I'll leave it at that. If you want more information on any of these specific subjects, please let me know in the comments down below. And of course, like and subscribe, it helps the channel. I'm gonna keep uploading every single week, so hopefully you find these valuable. But that's pretty much it for this video. This is Noah Brewer, and I'm out. Peace.